welcome to Invest IQ Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Today we're doing a deep dive, really getting into the rental market in the Port Charlotte area down in Southwest Florida.
That's right.
Now, just a really quick but important reminder before we jump in. This conversation is purely for informational purposes.
Okay.
It's definitely not financial or investment advice.
Absolutely. Critical point. Always talk to a qualified professional before you make any big financial decisions. You know, it's constantly fascinating how places evolve, how economies shift, and how that all plays out in something as fundamental as where we live. Southwest Florida, it definitely has that promise, that lifestyle appeal. It's been drawing a lot of attention.
Absolutely. And today we're taking a really focused look right into one specific corner, Port Charlotte.
Okay.
We've gathered a range of sources to really dig into what's happening right now with residential rentals there.
And maybe where things are going.
Exactly. And perhaps more importantly, where things might be heading.
Yeah.
Think of this as, your quick but deep guide to understanding the Port Charlotte rental scene.
Right.
Our goal is simple. Pull out the crucial insights. Current prices, future expectations, the local economy, jobs, any new developments.
Without getting bogged down.
Yeah.
I want those aha moments.
Precisely. Avoid the overwhelm, focus on clarity. And while some broader Florida trends might pop up for context.
Our main focus is Port Charlotte.
Squarely on Port Charlotte. So let's get right into it. What's the current scene? What are people actually paying for rentals there right now?
Yeah. Let's start with the numbers.
Okay, let's unpack this. Looking at the recent data. Average monthly rents in Port Charlotte. For apartments, you're looking at around $790.
Okay.
Condos are averaging a bit less, say $1,690. Houses, they tend to be higher naturally, about $2,235 a month.
Right.
And if you're just renting a room, that comes in around $767 on average.
Interesting range. Have these prices been, pretty steady lately, or have we seen some movement?
Definitely seen some movement just in the last 30 days. Apartment rents, they ticked up slightly, about 1%.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. But the bigger shifts, condos and houses, condo rents jumped by around 8%.
8%. Okay.
And house rent saw a really significant increase, 14% in just the past month.
Wow, 14%.
Yeah. Room rentals, meanwhile, pretty stable, just that 1% increase like apartments. So quite a difference in momentum there.
It really is. That big jump in condo and especially house rents, that raises some questions. How does Port Charlotte stack up against nearby places, price-wise?
That's a great way to frame it. Context is key, right? So if we look at the median rent across all property types, compare Port Charlotte to its neighbors. Oca Grande, for instance, has this incredibly high median rent, $18,873.
Whoa. Luxury market, I assume?
Yeah, likely skewed by a very high-end market. Then you've got Cape Hayes at $3,903, Inglewood, $3,422, Northport, $2,292, and Punta Gorda, $3,495.
Okay.
So Port Charlotte's costs seem to land it sort of somewhere in the middle of that pack.
That helps place it. Okay,
Yeah.
So shifting from price to availability.
Right.
Are we seeing a lot of rentals on the market? Is it tight? What's the inventory like?
Yeah, inventory. Here's where things get really interesting and maybe a bit nuanced.
Okay.
In Charlotte County overall, we're seeing an increase in homes and condos listed for sale.
For sale. Okay. Not necessarily rentals yet.
Exactly. By February 2025, the signs were pointing towards more of a buyer's market. Specifically, listings for condos, villas, townhomes, those were up a lot. 39% compared to the year before in January. Over 1,100 units for sale.
That's a huge jump in options for buyers.
It is.
And what's that doing to sale prices with more on the market?
Well, it seems like that increased inventory is putting downward pressure, especially on those attached homes, condos, villas, townhomes.
Right.
Their median sale price in Charlotte County dropped significantly, 22.3% year over year in January, down to $241,000.
Wow. Over 20% decrease.
Yeah. But interestingly, single-family homes, not such a dramatic price drop, more modest, like 3.8% down, median around $350,000.
But are they selling?
Actually, yes. Closed sales for single-family homes were up almost 12%. So they might be moving faster despite only a small price dip.
Okay, so that's a key difference. Single family moving, condo market seeing more inventory and bigger price drops. Now, I did see some online buzz, some Reddit threads mentioning a huge spike in overall housing inventory in the county. What's the story there?
You're right. That discussion was out there. Talk of maybe double the pre-pandemic inventory.
Double.
Yeah. But here's the crucial detail, or at least the caveat from that discussion. A big chunk of that increase might just be land. vacant lots.
Ah, not actual houses or rentals ready to go.
Exactly. That same online chat also mentioned a pretty big year-over-year drop in asking rents, like 17% down to Charlotte County. Average rent around $2,150, down $440.
Okay.
But, it's worth remembering, online forums give you anecdotes, snapshots. Official data gives the broader picture.
Good point. So it's complex. The for-sale market, especially condos, seems to be cooling with more inventory and price cuts. But the rental market, well, it's a bit mixed. Recent rent hikes for some types, but also reports of overall asking rents falling. What's driving all this? What factors are influencing the current market dynamics?
Several interconnected things are likely at play. A big one: ongoing uncertainty, homeowner insurance, and especially flood insurance rates in Florida.
That's huge there.
It's a major concern for owners, investors,
Uh-huh.
and it ripples into the rental market too.
Sure.
Then you've got the new regulations. For condo buildings over 3 stories or older than 30 years, the Building Safety Act stuff.
Right, the milestone cities, the reserve funding.
Exactly. Those mandatory inspections, the long-term financial planning needed for structural reserves, the deadlines. It potentially cools buyer demand for older condos, adds cost and complexity.
And there are a lot of older condos in Southeast Florida, right? Could that have a wider effect?
It certainly could. A substantial number were built before '93. So, yeah, these rules could definitely have ripple effects.
Okay, so insurance uncertainty, new condo rules. Anything else specific to Port Charlotte playing a role?
Absolutely. We can't forget Hurricane Ian in 2022.
Still feeling the effects?
Definitely. Many homes are still being repaired. That whole ongoing recovery process, plus the heightened awareness of hurricane risk, it feeds into the anxiety around insurance premiums, market stability,
Including rentals.
including rentals. The timeline for getting back to normal, it's still unfolding.
Okay, so a mix of insurance worries, new regulations, and hurricane recovery shaping today's rental scene there. Let's shift gears. What about the future? What are the projections looking like for the Port Charlotte rental market?
Right, looking ahead, one important piece is mortgage rates. Where are they heading?
Yeah.
Our sources didn't have specific Southwest Florida projections handy, but Miami Realtors forecasted for Southeast Florida. They see 30-year fixed rates potentially declining, maybe 6.6% by end of 2024,
Okay.
and possibly down to 5.7% by the end of 2025. This is based on expected Fed rate cuts.
Right. The Fed lowering rates usually brings down borrowing costs.
Exactly.
So how might lower mortgage rates, even if projected for Southeast Florida, influence rentals in Port Charlotte? Is there a connection?
Well, the thinking is this: more affordable mortgages could tempt some current renters to buy homes instead.
Makes sense.
They estimated about 1,000 households might make that switch in Southeast Florida specifically. This could potentially soften rental demand there.
Interesting.
And interestingly, their projections showed condo sales staying pretty flat in Southeast Florida, maybe tied to those building safety rules we talked about, making buyers pause on older condos.
Yeah.
So while these are Southeast Florida numbers, if a similar trend of falling mortgage rates happens in Southwest Florida, well, it could also push some Port Charlotte renters towards buying, which would impact rental demand here too.
Okay, that's logical. Lower rates make buying more attractive. What about the bigger picture? The economy, job growth in the region? How does that play into the future of rentals?
That's critical. Southeast Florida, again, using those projections, is looking at healthy job growth. Total employment, including self-employed, up maybe 1.4% in 2024, and another 2.4% in 2025. That's like 80,000 new jobs added. Miami-Dade was actually leading payroll growth among big U.S. counties late last year.
That's strong growth. What about closer to Port Charlotte?
While the specific numbers were for Southwest Florida, including Charlotte County, is definitely seeing economic activity. Florida cut its commercial lease sales tax recently,
Oh, yeah?
which could attract businesses, help existing ones expand. That indirectly spurs job creation.
Right.
And we are seeing growth in sectors like manufacturing, professional services right there in Southwest Florida. Those often mean higher paying jobs.
Attracting skilled workers who might need rentals, at least initially.
Exactly. That could fuel rental demand.
So maybe some competing forces. Lower mortgage rates potentially pulling renters out, but job growth potentially pulling new renters in.
It could shape up that way, yeah.
Okay. Now, are there any big construction projects or developments in Port Charlotte that might change the rental supply picture down the line?
There are a couple of things. The Rebuild Florida program is still working on Hurricane Ian housing repairs.
Right.
As those homes get fixed up, some could re-enter the rental market, adding a bit to supply over time. Gradually, yeah. And Charlotte County has that 1% local option sales tax funding various projects. But our sources didn't detail specific future rental construction from that.
Okay.
We just know that general hurricane recovery construction is still ongoing across Southwest Florida. It's expected to take more time before things feel completely normal or before major new rental-specific projects really get going.
So no massive wave of new rentals seemingly on the immediate horizon, but the recovery efforts will slowly add units back.
Got it. Let's zoom out a bit then. The overall Charlotte County economy.
Yeah.
What's happening with the workforce?
Well, Southwest Florida has seen really substantial population growth, over 7% just between 2019 and 2022.
Wow.
And they're projecting another 30% growth by 2050.
That's huge. Creates a big need for workers.
Definitely. A larger skilled workforce. And encouragingly, the job market's been responding. Non-farm jobs up over 5% between 2021 and 2023 in the region.
Good sign. And local institutions like Florida Gulf Coast University, FGCU, they're actively trying to align programs with what local businesses need, trying to keep skilled graduates in the region.
Smart. Is it working? Are they seeing more skilled labor?
They are seeing an increase. The percentage of the workforce considered skilled went from 39% back in 2013 up to over 44% in 2022.
Okay.
But there's still a recognized need to keep pushing that number up to meet the demands of the growing economy.
So efforts are underway to build that local workforce to support the growth. That clearly impacts housing demand, including rentals in Port Charlotte. What about tourism? How big a role does that play?
Tourism is definitely a significant economic engine there. If you look at the Punta Gorda Englewood Beach area specifically, a big chunk of visitors, 56%, drove in. 12% flew into Southwest Florida airports. And importantly, most stayed overnight, 72%. About a quarter stayed in hotels.
Which leaves a lot staying elsewhere, potentially short-term rentals.
Potentially, yes. Other accommodations, maybe including rentals. The visitor profile is interesting too. Median age 50, median household income $100,000. That's decent spending power.
What did they do there?
Top activities, beach, restaurants, visiting friends and family. It highlights that lifestyle draw.
Yeah.
And interestingly, most visitors were primarily focused on Punta Gorda Englewood Beach when planning their trip. It suggests strong, specific demand for that area.
So tourism brings in people and money and likely fuels part of the rental market, maybe more on the short-term side, but still part of the picture. Okay, one last piece on the economy. Unemployment. Do we know the rate?
Our sources didn't give a precise current number for Charlotte County itself, but, given the job growth trends we talked about for Southwest Florida,
Suggests a generally healthy job market.
yeah, likely a relatively low unemployment rate. And lower employment usually means more people can afford housing, whether renting or buying. So it's definitely relevant for rental demand.
Okay, it really paints a picture of a dynamic, evolving market in Port Charlotte. We've covered current prices, inventory, the driving factors, future projections, the wider economy, workforce, tourism, few. But as always, we need to remember these are data points, projections.
Yeah.
There are always nuances, right?
Absolutely. And it's crucial to acknowledge that. Online discussions, like we mentioned, can show conflicting views, talk of bubbles, debates about post-Ian price fluctuations.
Right.
And those big factors, insurance costs, the building regulations, they remain really significant wild cards shaping the Southwest Florida housing scene. And of course, projections can always change. Depends on the broader economy, what the Fed does, unforeseen events like future storms, unfortunately.
Absolutely. So let's try to wrap this up. Key takeaways from our deep dive into Port Charlotte rentals. What stands out?
Okay. Currently, we're seeing a for-sale market, especially condos, with rising inventory putting some downward pressure on sale prices. Rental rates. They've seen some recent jumps for houses and condos, but there are also those reports of overall asking rents decreasing. Likely a complex mix influenced by post-hurricane recovery and the shifting sales market.
And looking ahead,
potential downward pressure on rental demand could come if mortgage rates keep falling, making buying more accessible. That's a trend projected for the broader Southeast region, at least.
But countered by?
Countered by potential job growth in Southwest Florida, which could attract new renters to Port Charlotte.
So keep a close eye on those competing trends.
Exactly. And always keep factors like insurance costs and those building regulations in mind. They're major ongoing influences.
This leads us to that final thought, doesn't it? The question for you, our listener.
Yeah. Considering all these interconnected pieces, the inventory shifts, the insurance costs, potential rate changes, job growth, What do you see as the biggest opportunity, or perhaps the biggest challenge, in the Port Charlotte residential rental market over the next few years?
Something to definitely mull over. We encourage you to keep observing, keep researching how these trends play out on the ground.
It's a fascinating market to watch.
It really is. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Port Charlotte residential rental scene. We hope this has given you some valuable insights into this evolving market.